In the quiet town of Kayasato, spring arrives wrapped in a pink haze of cherry blossoms. For Aiko Tanaka, a shy and introspective art student, life drifts by like the petals she sketches each afternoon beneath the sakura tree on the hill behind her school. When Reina Sato, a spirited transfer student with a mischievous grin and a troubled past, stumbles into her peaceful world, Aiko's solitude begins to crack open. What starts as a hesitant friendship blossoms into something tender and frighteningly real, a love as fleeting and fragile as the falling petals. But with graduation and family expectations threatening to tear them apart, both girls must find the courage to choose between what's safe and what truly makes them free. The first day of spring arrived like a sigh, soft, warm, and tinged with the scent of blooming petals. Aiko Tanaka sat beneath her favorite cherry tree, her sketchbook balanced carefully on her knees. The world around her glowed in gentle shades of pink and gold. The air was thick with drifting petals, dancing lazily before landing in her hair, her lap, and occasionally on the page where her pencil moved. She didn't mind. The petals were part of the art, tiny accidents that made the drawing feel alive. The hill behind Kayasato Academy was quiet, except for the occasional rustle of the wind and the distant chatter of students finishing their club activities. Ko preferred it that way. People made her nervous. Words never came out the way she wanted them to. Art was simpler, lines didn't judge her. She was halfway through shading the curve of a branch when a voice suddenly called out, "Hey! Is this spot taken?" Aiko startled so hard that her pencil snapped. She looked up. Standing before her was a girl she'd never seen before. Tall, with shoulder-length hair dyed a soft auburn that gleamed under the sunlight. Her uniform blazer was half unbuttoned, and there was a playful smirk tugging at her lips. No," Aiko managed. "You can sit here." "Cool." The girl plopped down beside her without hesitation, stretching her legs. "I'm Reina. Just transferred here today." Ko blinked. "From Tokyo," Reina said, as if that explained everything. "Parents thought I needed a change of pace." She made air quotes with her fingers, rolling her eyes. "So here I am. Small town quiet school surrounded by trees and serenity. I feel like I've joined a monastery." Aiko let out a soft, involuntary laugh. Small but genuine. Reina's grin widened. "Hey, you laughed. I'll take that as a victory." "I'm sorry," Aiko said quickly. "I didn't mean." "Don't apologize," Reina cut in gently. "It's nice to hear someone laugh for real." There was a silence between them then. Not awkward, just soft. Reina leaned back on her elbows, watching petals fall. "You come here a lot." "Every day after classes," Aiko said. "It's quiet. I draw here." Reina tilted her head toward the sketchbook. "Can I see?" Ko hesitated. Her drawings were personal. They were pieces of her she wasn't used to showing. But something about Reina's voice was disarming. "Okay," she murmured, turning the book around. Reina leaned closer, eyes scanning the page. "Wow, this looks like it's breathing." Ko blinked. "Breathing?" "Yeah," Reina said, smiling. "Like the trees alive. Not just drawn." No one had ever described her art that way before. Not even her teacher. Heat rose to Aiko's cheeks. "Thank you," she said softly. Reina's eyes lingered on her for a moment, longer than felt casual, before she looked away. "You know, you're kind of amazing." Ko froze. No one had ever called her that either. I mean at drawing." Reina added quickly, laughing at herself. "You're probably amazing at other stuff too, but I don't know you yet, so, yeah." Aiko couldn't help it, she laughed again. A real laugh this time. Reina's awkward honesty was strangely charming. "See," Reina said, grinning. "Told you I'd make you laugh again." They talked until the sun began to dip behind the trees, painting the sky with orange and violet hues. Aiko learned that Reina used to live in Tokyo with her divorced parents. She'd gotten into trouble for skipping classes, not because she was lazy, but because she said, "I wanted to feel something real for once." Aiko didn't fully understand what that meant, but she didn't need to. She felt something shift quietly inside her, like the first petal falling before a storm. When the school bell rang in the distance, Reina stood and stretched. "Guess I'll see you around, Aiko." Aiko blinked in surprise. "How do you know my name?" Reina pointed to her sketchbook, her name neatly written on the inside cover. "Artists always sign their work." Aiko smiled, looking down at the fallen petals around her. "You noticed." "I notice a lot of things," Reina said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Especially things worth noticing." And with that she left, walking down the hill, her auburn hair glowing like fire against the sunset. Aiko sat there long after she was gone, her heart strangely restless. The wind picked up, carrying a flurry of petals across her lap. She pressed a hand against her chest as if to calm it. The beating felt too fast, too unfamiliar. For the first time, the silence beneath the sakura didn't feel like peace. Felt like waiting. By the end of the week, everyone at Kayasato Academy had heard about the new transfer student. The one who wore her tie loose, her skirt a little too short, and her grin like she owned the place. Reina Sato had become a walking rumor. She mouthed off to a teacher. "I heard she used to go to a delinquent school in Tokyo. She got detention 3 times already." Aiko heard it all in snippets between classes, whispered in hallways or over lunch trays. But whenever someone mentioned Reina, Aiko's heart gave a small, traitorous flutter, not out of fear or judgment but curiosity. She hadn't spoken to Reina again since that afternoon beneath the cherry tree, but the memory still played in her mind like a scene from a film. The way Reina had smiled. The way her words had felt heavier than they sounded. That Friday afternoon, Aiko sat in the art room alone, working on her latest sketch. The others had already gone home, and the only sound was the faint ticking of the clock. She was lost in shading when a loud voice echoed from the doorway. "Yo, Picasso! You hiding from the world again?" Aiko nearly dropped her pencil. She looked up to see Reina leaning against the doorframe, holding 2 bottles of strawberry milk. "Our Reina." "In the flesh," Reina said, walking in and plopping one of the bottles onto Aiko's desk. "You looked like you could use some sugar." Ko blinked. "How did you know I was here?" "I asked around," Reina said, taking a sip of her drink. "Apparently, you spend every free moment in this room or under that sakura tree. I figured one of the two had to be right." Ko smiled shyly. "You guessed right." "Of course I did." Reina smirked, pulling up a chair beside her. "So, what masterpiece are we working on today?" Aiko hesitated, then turned her sketchpad around. It was a half-finished drawing of the cherry tree from memory, but this time she had drawn 2 figures beneath it. One sitting, sketching. The other lying on the grass, looking up at the sky. Reina tilted her head. "Hey, that looks like us." Ko's cheeks flushed. "It's just practice." "Sure it is," Reina teased, grinning. "You even got my hair right, though I think you made me look too serious. I'm way more dazzling than that." Ko giggled softly. "You're impossible." "I've been called worse," Reina said, sipping her drink again. "So, tell me, Aiko Tanaka, why do you like drawing trees so much?" Ko thought for a moment. "Because they stay even when everything else changes." Reina's expression softened. "That's actually beautiful." "It's silly," Aiko said, embarrassed. "No," Reina said quietly. "I get it." Ko looked up. Reina was staring out the window, eyes distant. For a moment, she didn't look like the troublemaker everyone whispered about. She looked lost. "Do you miss Tokyo?" Ko asked gently. Reina shrugged. "Sometimes. But I don't miss who I was there." "Who were you?" Reina smiled faintly. "Someone who laughed at the rules until the rules laughed back." Ko frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Reina said, leaning back, "I made a lot of mistakes. And when you make too many of those in a city like Tokyo, people stop looking at you like a person and start seeing you as a problem." Aiko didn't know what to say. She wanted to reach out, to tell Reina she wasn't a problem, but the words tangled in her throat. Reina noticed the hesitation and grinned again, covering the silence with a laugh. "Wow, this got heavy fast." Sorry, didn't mean to trauma dump on you. It's okay, Aiko said softly. You can talk to me. Reina looked at her, the teasing fading from her eyes for a heartbeat. Careful, Tanaka. You say stuff like that, and I might actually believe you. Ko blushed, looking away. Maybe you should. For a moment neither spoke. The air between them buzzed, quiet but alive like the seconds before rain. Then Reina suddenly stood. Come on. Grab your sketchbook. I'm taking you somewhere. Where? You'll see. Aiko hesitated but obeyed, following her out of the art room. They snuck past the dorms across the courtyard, and through a path behind the school that led toward the town. The sun had already begun to set, the sky painted with pink and orange streaks. Reina led her to a narrow bridge over a small river. The water sparkled with floating petals, like a trail of tiny pink boats. Ko gasped. It's beautiful. Reina grinned, leaning on the railing. Told you it was worth it. I found it by accident yesterday. The current's full of blossoms this time of year. Aiko flipped open her sketchbook without thinking, her hand moving automatically. Reina watched her draw, quietly at first, then broke the silence. You know, she said softly, I think this is the first time I've seen you smile this much. Ko paused, glancing up. Really? Yeah. You look like someone who finally remembered what joy feels like. Aiko felt a warmth rise in her chest that had nothing to do with the sunset. Maybe I did. Reina chuckled. I'll take the credit then. I'm basically your muse now. Aiko laughed, the sound mingling with the murmur of the river. When she looked up again, Reina was still watching her. Not teasing, not smirking. Just watching. And for a brief, fragile moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then Reina looked away, clearing her throat. Anyway, if anyone asks, we were totally studying. You know, for art class. Ko giggled. Of course. Studying cherry blossoms. Reina smirked. Exactly. The most important subject. They stayed there until the light faded and the fireflies began to blink along the riverbank. When they finally walked back to the dorms, their shoulders brushed once, just enough for Aiko's heart to trip over itself. As she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, she replayed every word, every smile, every fleeting glance. And when sleep finally came, she dreamed of petals floating down a river, and of a girl with laughter bright enough to stir even the quietest heart. If Aiko had learned one thing in the weeks since Reina arrived, it was this. Rules were optional, at least according to Reina Sato. Started small. A skipped morning assembly here. A daring late-night snack run there. Reina had a knack for bending the school's strict code without ever quite breaking it. You can't keep doing this, Aiko whispered one afternoon as Reina climbed through the art room window again. Reina winked. Doors are boring. You'll get caught. Not if you don't snitch. Aiko sighed, though her lips twitched despite herself. I wouldn't. Good. Reina plopped onto the floor beside her, pulling out a bag of spicy chips. Then we're partners in crime now. I didn't agree to that, Aiko said, though her voice was soft with amusement. You didn't disagree either, Reina said, grinning. There it was, that easy, confident smile that seemed to dissolve Aiko's resistance every time. They spent the next hour like that, Reina telling dramatic stories about Tokyo, Aiko sketching quietly while trying not to smile too much. And then, Reina said, waving her hands, my class rep caught me sneaking out the back gate, and I told her I was looking for my spiritual freedom. Aiko snorted with laughter. You didn't. I did. She gave me a 30-minute lecture on discipline and decorum, and then I gave her my snacks to make her stop. That's bribery, Aiko said, giggling. That's diplomacy, Reina corrected, mock-offended. Aiko shook her head, laughing. You're impossible. Reina leaned closer, her eyes glinting. And yet you keep hanging out with me. Ko froze for a heartbeat. That's true. The air between them grew still. Reina's smile softened, her usual teasing giving way to something quieter, warmer. I'm glad you do, you know. Aiko's pencil paused mid-line. Glad. Yeah, Reina said, looking away with an awkward little shrug. Most people either gossip about me or avoid me. But you just sit here and draw like I'm not a walking disaster. You're not a disaster, Aiko said, almost without thinking. You're different. Reina looked back at her, eyes bright with surprise, then laughed a little too quickly. Different, huh? I'll take that as a compliment. Ko smiled. It is. Later that week, Reina's different streak took another turn. During morning homeroom, the teacher made an announcement. Next Friday we will hold our annual spring festival. Each class must present a booth or performance. Volunteers. Silence. Tanaka Aiko, the teacher said. You're good at art. You'll help with decorations. Ko blinked. Ah yes, sensei. Reina, from the back of the room, raised her hand. I'll help too. Everyone turned. The teacher frowned. Sato-san. You've barely been here 3 weeks. All the more reason to participate, Reina said, grinning. I'm a fast learner. The teacher sighed. Fine. But if anything goes wrong, it's on you. Reina saluted. Understood. Aiko couldn't help smiling. When their eyes met across the room, Reina mouthed, You owe me. Aiko mouthed back, For what? Reina's smirk deepened. You'll see. That weekend, they met in the art room to start painting banners for the festival. Aiko took her usual careful, meticulous approach. Reina, however, decided that precision was optional. Reina, Aiko said, trying not to laugh. You just painted over the letter E. Oops. Reina grinned. It's abstract now. It says Spring F Stival. Reina squinted. Well, maybe it's avant-garde. The missing E symbolizes the emptiness of modern youth. Aiko giggled so hard she nearly dropped her brush. You're ridiculous. Ridiculously talented, Reina said. With paint on your face. Wait, what? Reina reached up, smearing green paint across her cheek. Where? Everywhere. Reina gasped dramatically. Aiko, you should have told me sooner. Now I look like a swamp monster. You always look like one, Aiko teased before she could stop herself. Reina's eyes widened. Then she laughed so hard she nearly fell off her stool. Wow. Did quiet little Aiko just roast me? Aiko covered her face, red. I didn't mean. No, that was perfect, Reina said, still laughing. I'm proud of you. Aiko peeked through her fingers, smiling shyly. You're impossible. True, Reina said, picking up a paintbrush and then flicking it. A speck of blue landed on Aiko's cheek. Ko froze. Did you just? Art attack, Reina declared, brandishing the brush like a sword. Reina. Aiko tried to dodge, laughing despite herself. Within minutes, the art room looked like a battlefield. Splashes of color on the floor, the walls, their uniforms. Aiko managed to swipe a streak of pink across Reina's sleeve in revenge. Victory! Ko cried, breathless. Reina laughed, eyes crinkling. Oh, it's on now, Tanaka. Before Aiko could escape, Reina reached out, not with paint, but with her hand, brushing a stray petal from Aiko's hair. The laughter faded. Their eyes met, close enough for Aiko to see the faint freckles on Reina's nose, the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then Reina whispered, You've got paint everywhere. Ko blinked, flustered. So do you. They both laughed, the moment breaking like sunlight through clouds. By the time they finished cleaning up, the sun was setting again. The art room smelled faintly of turpentine and sakura perfume. As they packed up, Reina said softly, You know, Aiko, when I'm with you, I forget to act tough. Ko paused. You don't have to act tough. Reina smiled, small, almost sad. Yeah, but it's hard to stop when that's all people expect from you. Aiko didn't know how to reply, so she did something she'd never done before. She reached out, hesitantly, and wiped a bit of paint from Reina's cheek with her thumb. Reina froze, eyes wide. There, Aiko said softly. All clean. The silence that followed was electric. Soft, unspoken, trembling. Then Reina smiled again, this time gentler than before. You really are dangerous, Tanaka. Aiko blinked. Dangerous? Yeah. Reina's voice was warm. You make people feel safe, and that's the scariest thing of all. Aiko didn't understand what she meant. Not fully. But when Reina left that evening, Aiko sat for a long time by the window, watching the cherry petals drift outside. Her heart fluttering in rhythm with the wind. Something inside her was changing. Slowly, quietly, like spring itself. The late afternoon sun poured through the art room windows, scattering gold across the wooden floor. The faint scent of turpentine mixed with the sweetness of spring air drifting in through a half-open window. Aiko sat at her easel, a blank sheet before her. She hadn't been able to draw for half an hour. Not because she lacked inspiration, but because her mind wouldn't stop replaying the sound of Reina's laugh. She'd laughed earlier that day during lunch, when Aiko had accidentally spilled her juice and stammered an apology so fast it came out in a single breath. Instead of teasing her, Reina had just grinned and said, "You're lucky it wasn't coffee. That's my only personality trait." Now, even in the quiet art room, that smile lingered in Aiko's mind like sunlight she couldn't look away from. Hey! Aiko jumped so hard that her pencil rolled off the easel. She turned to see Reina leaning against the doorframe, still in her half-untucked uniform, hair slightly messy from the breeze. "You scared me," Aiko said softly, clutching her chest. Reina grinned. "Sorry. I knocked like twice. You were staring at your paper like it owed you money." Aiko blushed, looking away. "I was thinking." "Dangerous habit," Reina teased, walking over. "So, what's today's masterpiece?" "It's not a masterpiece," Aiko murmured, embarrassed. "It's just practice." Reina leaned down beside her, her chin almost resting on Aiko's shoulder as she peered at the sketch. Aiko could smell the faint citrus of Reina's shampoo, and her heart immediately started misbehaving. "Whoa," Reina said softly. "This looks alive." Aiko's fingers tightened on her pencil. "Alive?" "Yeah. Like the trees breathing or something." Reina tilted her head, eyes tracing the lines. "You make it look so real I can almost feel the wind." Aiko's cheeks flushed. "You always say things like that." "Like what?" "Things that make me," she hesitated, searching for the word. "Confused." Reina laughed. "Then I'm doing my job right." Aiko tried to look annoyed, but the corners of her lips betrayed her. "You're impossible. And yet, you keep talking to me," Reina said, smirking as she pulled up a stool next to her. "So either I'm charming, or you secretly enjoy the chaos." "I think," Aiko said carefully, "you just don't give me a choice." Reina grinned. "I'll take that as a yes." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, broken only by the sound of pencil on paper and the wind outside. Reina leaned her arms on the desk, watching Aiko's hand move in soft, deliberate strokes. "You're really talented," she said suddenly, her tone gentler than before. "You could go to art school in Tokyo if you wanted." Aiko's pencil stopped. "My parents wouldn't allow it. They want me to study something practical." Reina made a face. "Practical is boring. The world needs more people who draw cherry trees." Aiko smiled faintly. "What about you? What do you want to do?" Reina shrugged. "No idea. My parents have their plans, but they don't exactly ask me what I want." There was something in her voice, a flicker of sadness that didn't match her usual brightness. Aiko wanted to ask more, but Reina quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, I'll support your art dreams. When you're famous, I'll tell people I was your first fan." Aiko turned pink again. "You're not my fan." Reina smirked. "You sure about that?" Aiko opened her mouth, but no words came. Reina's gaze held hers, playful, but with something deeper beneath it, something that made Aiko's breath catch. The moment stretched, long enough for both of them to feel it. Then Reina stood abruptly, rubbing the back of her neck. "Okay, this silence is getting suspiciously romantic. I'm leaving before I say something dumb." Aiko blinked. "Too late," she said softly, surprising even herself. Reina laughed, genuinely caught off guard. Did the quiet girl just roast me? Maybe, Aiko said, trying not to smile. Unbelievable. Reina grabbed her bag dramatically. You've been corrupted by my influence. I'm proud. She waved as she left the room, her laughter echoing down the hall. Aiko watched her go, her chest tightening with something she didn't yet understand. She looked down at her drawing and froze. Without realizing it, she had sketched Reina. Not the grinning, teasing version everyone saw, but a softer one. A version that looked a little lost beneath the falling petals. Aiko's throat tightened. She reached out, brushing her fingers gently over the pencil lines, as if touching them could make sense of the feeling building inside her. Outside, a gust of wind blew through the window, scattering sakura petals across the page. Soft, fleeting, and impossibly beautiful. Aiko closed her eyes, whispering to the empty room. Reina, what are you hiding behind that smile? The rain had stopped just before dawn. By the time the afternoon sun peeked through the clouds, the world outside shimmered like glass, wet grass glinting, cherry blossoms dripping with light. Aiko sat beneath the sakura tree, sketchbook balanced on her knees. The air smelled like wet earth and new beginnings. It was her favorite kind of silence, the kind that felt alive. She was drawing the reflection of the blossoms in a puddle when she heard footsteps crunching behind her. Found you again, said a familiar voice. Reina plopped down beside her, still wearing her school jacket but with the sleeves rolled halfway up. Her hair was damp from the rain, sticking in little strands that framed her face. Ko didn't look up. You didn't have class. Skipped, Reina said casually, leaning back on her hands. Don't tell anyone. I think that counts as telling myself, Aiko murmured. Then I guess you're my partner in crime. Ko sighed but smiled. You really don't care about rules, do you? Reina tilted her head, watching a droplet fall from a branch onto her knee. Rules make sense until they start telling you who to be. Ko paused mid-sketch. You sound like a philosopher. I sound like someone who got detention 3 times last month, Reina corrected with a grin. They both laughed, a soft, genuine sound that blended with the hum of cicadas in the distance. For a moment, it felt like the world was only made of sunlight and laughter. Then Reina nudged her. Hey, come with me. Where? Ko blinked. Somewhere better than sitting under a tree all day. This is my somewhere better, Aiko said. Reina rolled her eyes but reached out anyway, grabbing Aiko's hand before she could protest. You'll like it. Trust me. Aiko hesitated, her heart skipping at the touch, but Reina's grip was warm, grounding. Against her better judgment, she followed. They walked along a narrow trail behind the dorms, past overgrown bushes and a rusted gate. The air grew thicker, greener, and filled with the scent of rain-soaked leaves. Reina pushed aside a curtain of ivy and gestured grandly. Welcome to my secret garden. Ko stepped through and stopped. It was a forgotten courtyard behind the old library. Wildflowers tangled around cracked stone benches. Moss climbed up faded walls where vines bloomed in quiet rebellion. And in the center stood a small pond, still and clear, reflecting the sky like a secret mirror. It's beautiful, Aiko breathed. Reina smiled faintly. Right. No one ever comes here. I found it last month when I was skipping class. Aiko turned to her. You skip class to find beauty. Reina shrugged. I skip class to breathe. The beauty's just a bonus. They sat by the pond, the silence between them soft again. Reina picked a tiny white flower from the grass and twirled it between her fingers. My mom used to grow these, Reina said quietly. Back when she still had time for gardens. Aiko glanced at her. Reina wasn't smiling. Her usual spark had dimmed, replaced by something raw. She works a lot. Ko asked gently. She works, yells, then works some more, Reina said, forcing a laugh. Guess I'm not exactly her idea of a perfect daughter. Aiko wanted to say something comforting but words felt clumsy. Instead, she tore a page from her sketchbook and began to draw. Reina leaned closer. "What are you?" "Shoo," Aiko said softly. "Hold still." A few minutes later, she turned the page toward Reina. It was a quick sketch, rough but alive. Reina sitting by the pond, a flower between her fingers, her expression peaceful for once. Reina stared at it, quiet. "That's me." Ko nodded. "The real you." Reina swallowed hard. "You make me look gentle." "Maybe you are," Aiko said simply. Reina looked down, hiding her face. For a long time she didn't speak. When she finally did, her voice trembled just a little. "No one's ever drawn me before." Aiko's heart ached. "Then maybe I'm the first of many." Reina laughed softly, brushing a stray petal off Aiko's hair. "You really don't know how much that means, do you?" Ko blushed. "I just drew what I saw." "And what did you see?" Reina asked. Ko hesitated. "Someone worth seeing." For a second, neither of them moved. The only sound was the wind stirring the water and the faint rustle of blossoms above. Then Reina reached out and took the drawing gently from Aiko's hand. She folded it carefully, almost reverently, and tucked it into her jacket pocket. "Then I'll keep it," she said, "to remind me that someone saw me like this once." Aiko's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't need a drawing to remember that." Reina smiled, a real soft smile this time. "Maybe not. But I want one anyway." They stayed until the sun dipped behind the trees, painting everything in warm gold. Neither wanted to leave the quiet safety of that place. When they finally stood, Reina reached for Aiko's hand again. This time Aiko didn't pull away. The rain came again that weekend, harder this time. Sheets of silver blurred the world beyond the dorm windows, and thunder rolled lazily in the distance. Aiko sat cross-legged on her bed, sketchbook open, the faint hum of rain filling the silence. Each droplet against the glass sounded like a memory of that day in the secret garden. Reina's laughter, the way her fingers had brushed the petals from Aiko's hair. She had drawn Reina again. She didn't mean to. But every time her pencil touched paper, Reina appeared. Her eyes, her smile, her sadness hidden behind it. Aiko's phone buzzed. "Reina, you awake?" Ko smiled. "Course she is." Reina always seemed to appear right when she was thinking about her. "'Cause it's raining a lot. Reina, meet me outside. Bring an umbrella." Ko blinked at the message. Outside. In this weather. For a second she hesitated. But her heart didn't. Within minutes she was pulling on her cardigan and slipping her sketchbook into her bag. Just in case. The courtyard was half flooded, the path slick with puddles. Rain drummed against her umbrella as she hurried toward the front gate. Reina stood there in the rain. No umbrella, hair plastered to her cheeks, uniform soaked. "Reina!" Ko shouted. "You'll catch a cold." Reina turned, laughing as if the downpour were nothing. "You came." "Of course I came," Aiko said, running up to her. "What are you doing out here?" "Needed to get away," Reina said simply. Aiko opened her umbrella wider, trying to cover them both. "From what?" Reina hesitated. Then quietly, "Everything." Aiko studied her face. The defiance was gone. In its place was exhaustion. The kind you don't get from running or studying, but from holding it all in. "Reina." Reina shook her head, forcing a smile. "It's fine. My mom called again. Same speech, different day." Aiko didn't ask what that meant. She didn't need to. Instead, she stepped closer, gently holding the umbrella over Reina's head. The rain was cold, but Reina's hand brushed against hers, warm, trembling. "Come on," Aiko said softly. "Let's go to the garden." Reina's eyes softened. "You remember the way?" Ko nodded. "I do." By the time they reached the hidden courtyard, the rain had slowed to a drizzle. The pond shimmered with ripples, petals floating across its surface like tiny boats. They sat on the stone bench beneath the overhanging branches. Reina's jacket clung to her shoulders, and Aiko wordlessly handed her a small towel from her bag. "You came prepared," Reina teased, her voice barely above the rain. I had a feeling you'd forget yours, Aiko replied quietly. Reina smirked. You're starting to know me too well. I'm trying to, Aiko said, her tone steady despite the pounding of her heart. Reina froze for a moment, meeting Aiko's gaze. Her eyes were glimmering, not from the rain but something deeper. You really shouldn't, she whispered. I'm not easy to know. Aiko shook her head. You don't have to be easy. You just have to be you. Reina's breath hitched. She looked away, blinking fast. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is, Aiko said. You just don't believe anyone could stay. Reina's silence said she was right. Then Aiko did something that surprised even herself. She reached out, gently tucking a wet strand of hair behind Reina's ear. Her fingers lingered for just a heartbeat. Reina stared at her, stunned. You're braver than you look. Aiko smiled faintly. Maybe you're softer than you pretend to be. Reina laughed under her breath, but there was no mockery in it. Just wonder. You really think so? I know so, Aiko said. The rain began to fall harder again, but neither of them moved. Reina looked up at the gray sky, then at Aiko and said softly, You ever think about how fast everything changes? One day you're alone under a tree and the next someone's there. Aiko nodded. And suddenly you don't want them to leave. Their eyes met and the world seemed to slow. Raindrops danced around them like falling petals, soft and endless. For a heartbeat, Reina leaned in. Not enough to close the space, but enough to make Aiko feel it. That fragile, unspoken question that neither of them dared to answer yet. Then Reina exhaled and pulled back, laughing quietly. We're going to look ridiculous if someone finds us out here. Aiko blushed, hiding her smile. Then maybe we'll make a good story. Reina grinned. You and your stories. And your chaos, Aiko countered. Guess we're a good mix, Reina said. Maybe that's why the rain doesn't feel so bad, Aiko whispered. Reina looked at her again, really looked, and this time her smile was small but real. You're dangerous, Aiko Tanaka. Aiko blinked. Dangerous. Reina nodded. You make people want to stay. Later that night, when Aiko returned to her dorm, she found her sketchbook still damp from the rain. She flipped it open, and there, pressed between the pages, was a single cherry blossom petal Reina must have tucked in while Aiko wasn't looking. It was small and fragile, but it made her heart ache in the sweetest way. Aiko smiled to herself and whispered, Then maybe I want you to stay too. The days that followed the forest incident were strange. Aiko and Reina still met after school, still shared snacks, still talked about silly things, but something unspoken lingered between them. Aiko could feel it, like a thin glass wall separating them. Every time she wanted to say something real, the words got stuck halfway up her throat. Reina, on the other hand, had been quieter too. Not her usual teasing, carefree self. Sometimes she'd catch Aiko's gaze and quickly look away, her expression unreadable. One afternoon, the sky hung heavy with rain clouds. The art club room was nearly empty except for Aiko, sketching aimlessly while waiting for Reina. But Reina never showed. When Aiko finally packed her things and stepped outside, she saw Reina across the courtyard, laughing with a group of seniors under an umbrella. That laugh. It used to belong to them. Aiko's chest tightened. She didn't want to be jealous. She didn't even understand why she felt this way. But the sting was sharp and sudden. She turned away before Reina could see her. That night, Reina texted. Reina. Sorry, couldn't make it today. Got pulled into something. Aiko, it's okay. Reina, you sure? You sound short. Aiko, I'm fine. Then nothing. The screen stayed dark, and so did the room. 2 days later, Aiko found Reina at the back of the library. She was slumped over a table, earphones in, staring blankly out the window. Aiko hesitated. Her heart pounded. She almost turned away, but then Reina looked up. Hey, Reina said softly. Her smile was tired. You've been avoiding me. I haven't, Aiko whispered. You have. Reina's tone wasn't accusing. Was sad. Did I do something wrong? Aiko opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a long time, the only sound between them was the soft patter of rain outside. Finally Aiko spoke. I just don't understand you sometimes. Reina blinked. What do you mean? You act like everything's a joke. Like nothing ever hurts you. Aiko's voice trembled. But it does, doesn't it? Reina stared at her, frozen. Aiko continued, eyes glistening. You laugh and you hide and I never know if you're being real with me. Something broke in Reina's expression. She looked down, biting her lip. Then in a low voice she said, I'm real when I'm with you. The words hit Aiko like a heartbeat echoing in the dark. Reina reached across the table, fingers brushing Aiko's hand. Aiko didn't pull away. Reina's hand was warm, trembling but warm. I'm sorry, Reina whispered. I get scared. I don't want to mess things up. You're the only person who makes me feel like I'm not invisible. Aiko looked at her, the rain reflected in both their eyes. And then softly, almost without thinking, she said, You're not invisible to me. Outside the rain kept falling. Inside, two hearts, fragile and confused, found their way a little closer. The week after that moment in the library, things between Aiko and Reina began to feel normal again, but in a different way. There was no pretending anymore. No forced laughter. No hiding behind jokes. Their silences felt fuller, softer, comfortable. Aiko noticed the little things about Reina she hadn't before. The way she tugged her sleeve when she was anxious, how her smile never quite reached her eyes when someone mentioned family. But Aiko never pushed. She just stayed close. One chilly evening they were walking home together. The streetlights painted long golden trails on the wet pavement, and their reflections rippled with every step. Reina kicked a pebble down the road and sighed. Hey! Can I ask you something? Aiko replied. What would you do if? Reina hesitated. If you felt trapped somewhere, like no matter what you did, you couldn't get out? Aiko frowned. Trapped? Reina nodded, staring at the ground. Yeah. Like you're living in someone else's world, following someone else's rules, pretending it's fine, when it's not. The way she said it, quiet, almost pleading, made Aiko's heart ache. I'd want to escape, Aiko said softly. Even if it's scary. Reina gave a small, sad smile. Yeah, I thought so. When they reached Reina's neighborhood, Aiko noticed how dim the houses looked. Reina's home sat at the end of a narrow lane. Dark curtains, cracked paint, no light inside. Want me to walk you in? Aiko offered. Reina shook her head quickly. No, it's fine. But just as Aiko turned to leave, a man's voice cut through the night. Rough, angry. Reina, where the hell have you been? Aiko froze. A tall man stood at the doorway, his shadow stretching across the steps. His tone wasn't worried, it was venomous. Reina's entire body stiffened. Her earlier bravado vanished. I told you I was at school, she muttered, barely above a whisper. The man stepped forward. Don't talk back to me. Aiko's stomach twisted. She wanted to say something, anything, but Reina turned to her with a shaky smile and whispered. Go, please. Aiko hesitated, eyes wide. But when she saw the fear in Reina's face, she did as asked. As she walked away, the door slammed shut behind her. And in that moment, Aiko finally understood. Reina's laughter wasn't light. It was armor. That night, Aiko couldn't sleep. She lay awake, replaying everything. The tremor in Reina's voice, the look in her eyes, the man's anger. The next morning, she found herself sketching without thinking. A girl sitting behind bars, smiling through cracks in the light. The drawing looked hauntingly like Reina. The next day at school, Reina acted like nothing happened. Jokes, laughter, stories. All perfectly timed. But Aiko could see the faint red mark near her collarbone, just under her uniform's edge. She wanted to reach out. She wanted to ask. But when their eyes met, Reina gave her that same bright smile, the one that begged, don't make me say it. So Aiko said nothing. For now. That evening, Aiko wrote in her sketchbook, "When someone laughs too loudly, it might be because they're trying not to cry." And she made herself a promise. The next time Reina needed someone, really needed someone, she wouldn't walk away. The sakura trees had started to shed their blossoms. The air was filled with drifting petals that clung to hair, uniforms, and the edges of Aiko's sketchbook like quiet memories refusing to let go. Days had passed since that night outside Reina's home. Reina still smiled, laughed even louder than before, but the laughter had a tremor to it now. A crack that only Aiko seemed to hear. One afternoon, Aiko found Reina sitting alone beneath the biggest sakura tree behind the dorms. Her head was bowed, and her phone was lying beside her, screen cracked. "Reina!" Reina didn't look up. She was holding something, a crumpled letter. Aiko hesitated before sitting down beside her. The wind tugged at the paper until Reina finally loosened her grip. It fluttered into Aiko's lap. It was from her mother. "You've embarrassed this family enough. Don't come home until you're ready to behave." The words hit Aiko like cold rain. Reina chuckled bitterly. "Guess I'm free now, huh?" Her voice trembled on the word free. Aiko looked at her, really looked at her, and saw how tired she seemed. The girl who once lit up rooms now looked like she was holding the pieces of herself together with sheer stubbornness. "Reina." Aiko's voice was barely a whisper. But Reina forced a grin. "It's fine. Really. I'm used to it. People leave. Houses change. Whatever." She stood abruptly and brushed the petals off her skirt, but her hand shook. Ko stood too. "You don't have to pretend with me." Reina froze. "I'm not pretending," she said quickly. "You are." Ko took a hesitant step closer. "You always smile when you're hurt. You joke when you're breaking inside." "I know because I used to do the same thing." Reina's lips parted, but no words came. For a moment, the only sound was the rustling of cherry blossoms falling like snow around them. Then Reina whispered, "Why do you care so much?" Aiko's voice trembled, but she met her eyes. "Because she stopped herself, cheeks flushing. "Because I don't want to see you disappear." Something cracked inside Reina then, not loudly but softly like glass giving way to light. She exhaled shakily and sank to her knees, covering her face. "I hate them," she said through quiet sobs. "I hate pretending it's okay. I hate that I'm not strong enough to leave." Aiko knelt beside her, reaching out. This time she didn't hesitate. She placed a hand gently over Reina's. "You don't have to leave alone." Reina looked up, tears streaming down her face, and for once she didn't hide them. "Why are you so kind to me?" Aiko smiled faintly. "Because someone should be." That night Reina didn't go home. She stayed in Aiko's dorm room, lying on the floor beside her bed while Aiko sketched quietly at her desk. Neither of them spoke for a long time, but the silence was warm, like a shared secret. "Hey, Aiko," Reina said softly. Do you ever think we were supposed to meet? Like, the universe planned it?" Aiko glanced down, smiling shyly. "Maybe. Or maybe we were just two lonely people who looked up at the same tree." Reina chuckled, a real laugh this time, small but true. And when Aiko looked at her, she realized she'd never seen anything more beautiful than Reina's real smile. Fragile, unguarded, and human. Outside, the wind carried the last of the sakura petals through the open window. They landed gently between them, like little pink promises of something new. The days after that night were different. Softer somehow. Reina started showing up to class more. She still joked, still teased, but there was something real behind it now. A warmth that hadn't been there before. Sometimes, Aiko would find her sitting by the window during art club, chin resting on her hand as she watched Aiko sketch. "You know," Reina said one afternoon, "I used to think people who draw were just showing off. But then I met you." Ko looked up, amused. "That's not exactly a compliment." Reina grinned. "No, I mean you make it look like breathing. Like you're not even trying. It's annoying." Aiko laughed softly, and Reina's grin widened. That laugh, light and a little shy, had become her favorite sound in the world. One evening, as the girls walked back to the dorms, the principal called out from across the courtyard. "Reina Sato. A word, please." Reina raised a brow. "Oh. I swear if this is about the fireworks again." But the principal's expression was gentle. "You've been offered an art scholarship," she said, "to a university in Tokyo. They saw your mural from the cultural festival, the one you painted with Aiko. It impressed them." Aiko froze. Reina's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" The principal smiled. "Very. You'd need to transfer after graduation, but it's a chance, Miss Sato." And just like that, the world shifted. That night, Reina couldn't sit still. She paced Aiko's dorm room like a caged cat, running her hands through her hair. "Tokyo, Aiko. Tokyo. Can you believe that?" Aiko tried to smile. "That's amazing, Reina. You deserve it." Reina stopped pacing. "You really think so?" "Of course. You've worked so hard." Reina's grin faltered. "Yeah, but it means leaving here." "Leaving you?" The words hung heavy in the air. Aiko felt her chest tighten. She forced a small smile. "We'll still talk. You'll visit." Reina scoffed softly. "You're a terrible liar." "I'm not lying," Aiko said quietly. "I just don't want to think about that yet." Reina's eyes softened. She sat beside her on the bed. "You always think about everyone else. When do you think about yourself, Aiko?" Aiko looked down at her hands. "I think about you." Reina blinked, stunned, and for a second neither of them breathed. Then Reina laughed nervously, brushing it off. "You really know how to ruin a perfectly sad moment, huh?" But her ears burned red, and Aiko saw the truth hiding beneath the laughter. A few nights later, Aiko found Reina at their usual spot beneath the cherry trees. The blossoms were almost gone now, the branches bare except for a few stubborn petals. Reina sat with her sketchbook open, drawing. It was Aiko, hair swept by the breeze, eyes half lost in thought. Aiko's heart fluttered. "That's me." Reina smiled without looking up. "Yeah. My favorite view." Aiko blushed, sitting beside her. "I'll miss this," she murmured. "The trees, the quiet you." Reina's pencil stilled. "Hey, don't say it like that." "Like what?" "Like it's goodbye." Aiko's eyes glistened. "Isn't it?" Reina finally met her gaze, and something in her expression cracked. All the masks, all the pretending gone. "I don't want it to be," she whispered. Aiko's throat tightened. "Then don't let it." Reina exhaled shakily. "You make it sound so simple." "Maybe it is," Aiko said softly. "You taught me that happiness isn't about what we're supposed to do. It's about who we choose." For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, the last few petals drifting between them like tiny hearts. Reina smiled faintly. "Then I choose you." Aiko's breath caught. "Reina." But before she could respond, the dorm bell rang in the distance, breaking the moment. Reina stood, slipping her hands into her pockets. "Come on. Before they lock us out again." As they walked away, Aiko noticed something fluttering on the ground, a petal landing on the sketch Reina had been working on. It was her face, smiling. Beneath it, Reina had written in small, careful letters, "If the blossoms fall, I'll find you again when they bloom." The final week of the term came like the slow turn of a page that no one wanted to read. Graduation decorations covered the school hallways. Pastel ribbons, farewell notes, laughter that sounded too forced to be carefree. For Aiko, every moment felt like sand slipping through her fingers. Reina had been busy. Meetings with the principal, calls from the university, packing up her things. The dorm room that used to echo with her laughter now looked bare, stripped of her chaos and color. And every time Aiko passed by, the reality of it hit her again. Reina was leaving. On the last evening before departure, Aiko found Reina sitting on the dorm rooftop, legs dangling over the edge, staring at the dark horizon. "Reina!" Aiko called softly. Reina looked over her shoulder, smiling faintly. Hey, I was wondering if you'd find me up here. I always do. Aiko sat beside her. The city lights blinked below them like tiny fireflies, and in the distance, the faint outline of the train tracks shimmered in the moonlight. Reina exhaled. Tomorrow, huh? Yeah. For a moment neither spoke. The sound of the wind filled the space between them. Not cold, not warm, just there. Reina tilted her head toward Aiko. You know what I'll miss most. Aiko blinked. What? The way you look at things, Reina said, her tone soft, almost wistful. Like even boring stuff, the way the rain hits the window or the way someone ties their shoes. You make it seem worth noticing. Aiko smiled shyly. That's because it is worth noticing. Reina chuckled. You'd make a terrible city girl, you know. Maybe, Aiko said, laughing softly. But someone has to remind you to slow down once in a while. Reina turned away, eyes glinting in the moonlight. I don't want to go, Aiko. The words came out fragile, almost broken. Aiko's breath caught. Then stay. Reina's lips parted, trembling. You know I can't. This scholarship, it's everything. I've never been good at anything before. And now, she swallowed hard. Now that I finally have something to be proud of, it feels like I'm losing the one thing that makes it mean something. Aiko's eyes shimmered. Reina. But Reina shook her head. Don't. If you say it, I'll stay. And you know I can't. Silence. Then Aiko leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. Then let me say it anyway. Reina turned to her, and before she could speak, Aiko reached up, her fingers brushing Reina's cheek. I love you. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was soft, trembling, and real. Reina froze. For a heartbeat, she looked like she might cry. Then she smiled, small and sad. Of course you do, she whispered. Because you're you. Aiko blinked back tears. And you don't. Reina exhaled shakily. Every second I breathe. A single tear slipped down her cheek, catching the light before falling. Then she leaned forward and kissed Aiko. Gentle, hesitant, like a promise whispered beneath the stars. For a moment the world disappeared. There was only the faint scent of sakura still lingering in Reina's hair, the warmth of her lips, and the sound of both their hearts trying to remember how to beat. When they pulled apart, Reina rested her forehead against Aiko's. I'll come back. I swear I will. Aiko nodded, smiling through tears. I'll be waiting beneath the sakura. The next morning came too soon. At the train station, Aiko stood among the crowd, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. Reina stood on the platform, duffel bag slung over her shoulder, wearing her usual grin, but her eyes told a different story. Don't forget me, okay? Reina said, trying to sound light. Aiko smiled faintly. You're impossible to forget. As the train whistle blew, Reina reached out and took Aiko's hand, squeezing it once hard before letting go. The doors closed. The train began to move. And as it disappeared into the distance, Aiko stood there, the wind tugging at her hair, petals swirling in the air like tiny ghosts of spring. She opened her sketchbook. On the last page, she had drawn two girls beneath a cherry blossom tree, one looking toward the horizon, the other smiling beside her. Beneath it, she'd written, "When the blossoms bloom again, so will we." Spring had come again to the countryside. The air smelled the same as it had that first day. Soft, clean, touched with the sweetness of sakura blossoms. The trees that had stood bare through winter now shimmered with pale pink, swaying gently in the afternoon breeze. Aiko sat beneath the largest one, their tree, her sketchbook open across her knees. The sun dappled the pages, and a half-finished drawing of falling petals stretched across the paper. It had been almost a year since Reina left. In that time, everything and nothing had changed. Aiko had graduated, moved into a small apartment near the art school she'd dreamed of, and spent her mornings sketching the world the way she used to when she first met her. But some days still felt quiet, too quiet. She still caught herself glancing at the spot beside her when the wind stirred the petals, as if Reina might be sitting there, smirking, teasing her about her serious art face. She smiled faintly at the memory. Reina's letters had been sporadic at first. Postcards from Tokyo filled with doodles, half-finished jokes, and bursts of chaotic energy that made Aiko laugh out loud. Then came longer messages. Stories about sleepless nights, the city lights, new friends, exhibitions. There were hints of loneliness between the lines, but also a spark of something Aiko had always seen in her: courage. And at the end of every letter, Reina wrote the same thing: "I'll come back when the blossoms bloom." That promise had carried Aiko through the winter, through long days of study and quiet nights where the moonlight felt too bright. Now, with spring's return, her heart fluttered with something between hope and fear. What if she didn't come? What if Tokyo had swallowed her whole, the way it did with dreams too soft to survive? She shook her head. Well, Reina wasn't soft. She was fire disguised as laughter. Aiko closed her eyes, letting the sound of the petals soothe her. "You'd better not break your promise, idiot," she murmured with a smile. "Who are you calling an idiot?" The voice came from behind her, teasing, familiar, warm. Aiko's heart stopped. She turned slowly, afraid that if she moved too fast the moment would vanish. There she was. Reina stood at the edge of the clearing, suitcase in one hand, hair a little longer, sun-kissed from the city. Her uniform had been replaced with jeans and a paint-stained jacket. She looked older, but her grin was exactly the same. Aiko blinked hard, afraid it was a dream. "Reina!" Reina dropped her suitcase and crossed the space between them in a few quick strides. "Didn't I tell you?" she said, out of breath but smiling. "I always keep my promises." Aiko covered her mouth with trembling hands. "You came back." "Of course I did," Reina said softly. "Tokyo was loud. Too bright. Too many people who didn't get my jokes." He grinned. "I missed your laugh." Aiko let out a shaky breath that turned into a laugh, half choked, half relieved. "You're late. The blossoms almost finished without you." Reina stepped closer, brushing a stray petal from Aiko's hair. "Nah. I made it just in time." They stood there for a moment, the whole world shrinking down to the sound of the wind and their racing hearts. Then, without hesitation, Reina pulled Aiko into her arms. It wasn't the kind of hug that spoke of distance or uncertainty. It was firm, desperate, home. "I missed you," Reina whispered into her hair. Aiko buried her face against her shoulder, voice trembling. "I missed you more." Reina pulled back just enough to look at her. "You waited." Aiko smiled softly. "Always." Reina exhaled, her eyes glistening. "You shouldn't have. But I wanted to." There was silence, tender and full, before Reina leaned forward and kissed her, slow and certain this time. Not the uncertain kiss of two people afraid of what's next, but one that said, "I'm here. Chose this." When they finally broke apart, Reina rested her forehead against Aiko's. "You still draw too much, huh? And you still talk too much," Aiko teased. Reina laughed, the sound echoing through the grove like sunlight breaking through clouds. "God, I missed this." They sat beneath the sakura tree for hours, talking about everything and nothing. Reina told her about the city, the chaos, the loneliness, the art that had almost eaten her alive. Aiko showed her sketches, dozens of them, all of the same subject: falling blossoms, waiting skies, and a girl with a bright, stubborn smile. "Guess I became your muse," Reina said, grinning. "You always were," Aiko admitted quietly. Reina looked at her then, eyes soft and steady. "Then let's not waste any more time apart." Aiko blinked. "What do you mean?" Reina smiled. "I talked to my professor before I came back. They said I could finish my final project remotely. I'm staying." Aiko's heart skipped. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Reina said. "Tokyo was great, but..." She shrugged, reaching for Aiko's hand. "This is where I can breathe." Aiko squeezed her fingers, eyes misting. "You're crazy." Reina grinned. "You love that about me." Aiko laughed through her tears. "I do." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the petals began to fall again, swirling around them in soft pink waves. Reina leaned back on her hands, gazing up at the branches. You know, she said, when I was in Tokyo, I kept trying to paint the perfect sakura. But I couldn't get it right. It always looked lonely. Aiko smiled, watching a petal land gently in Reina's hair. Maybe it was missing something. Reina turned to her. Yeah. You. They stayed like that until the sky turned gold, until the shadows stretched long and the air grew cool. And when they finally stood to leave, Aiko looked back at the tree, the same one where everything began, now blanketed in petals like a memory reborn. She whispered half to herself. The blossoms came back. Reina slipped her arm around her waist. So did we. Together they walked down the path lined with blooming trees, their laughter mingling with the wind. For the first time, Aiko didn't feel like she was sketching moments she wished she could keep. She was living them. And beneath the fading sky, two silhouettes disappeared into the pink haze of falling petals, their story finally complete. Some loves don't fade when the season ends. They simply wait, like the sakura, to bloom again.